The trembling stutter of a nervous man, a turban concealing a horrifying secret, and behind it all, the face of the Dark Lord himself. Quirinus Quirrell is often remembered as the timid, stuttering Defense Against the Dark Arts professor from Harry Potter's first year at Hogwarts. Nervous, soft-spoken, and constantly hiding behind that signature purple turban, he appeared, at least at first, to be one of the least threatening figures Harry could have encountered. But as we later find out, appearances can be deceiving. By the time Quirrell stood in front of Harry in the Great Hall, the man he once was had already begun to disappear. His brilliant mind, once shaped by academic curiosity, had been twisted by ambition and fear. And in pursuit of recognition he didn't believe he could achieve on his own, he turned to the darkest source of power imaginable. During the 1991-92 school year, Quirrell became one of the most consequential figures in modern wizarding history, not because of who he was, but because of who he allowed himself to serve. Today we're going to explore the full life of Quirinus Quirrell, from his overlooked beginnings as a brilliant Ravenclaw scholar, to the fateful journey that led him to Voldemort's grasp, and the horrifying transformation that followed. Let's dive into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Quirinus Quirrell was born sometime around 1967 in the British Isles, into a half-blood family. From a young age, he showed clear signs of intelligence, a sharp wit, and a fascination with knowledge. But alongside his intellect came something else: insecurity. Unlike many future dark wizards, if you could call him that, Quirrell wasn't raised on violent ideology or pure-blood superiority. His weakness wasn't hatred, it was fear. Fear of being overlooked, fear of being laughed at, fear that he would never amount to anything special. And as he grew older, that fear turned into something far more dangerous, a desperate desire to prove himself. And it was this insecurity that would shape almost every major decision he would make later in life. At age 11, Quirrell received his Hogwarts letter and was sorted into Ravenclaw House, a place known for those who prized learning, creativity, and intellect. He excelled academically, quickly distinguishing himself as a well-read and highly capable student. During his studies, he most likely obtained high-graded owls and newts in Muggle studies and Defense Against the Dark Arts, since not only did he go on to teach both, but he was specifically noted to have a gift for the theory of defensive magic. But despite his strengths, Quirrell struggled socially. He was shy, anxious, and easily intimidated. And unfortunately, Hogwarts is not always kind to those who can't stand up for themselves. Other students teased him, not for his magical ability, but for the way he carried himself. They saw him as weak, an easy target, and each jeer and whisper only deepened Quirrell's desire to be respected or feared. This quiet resentment simmered for years, and over time, Quirrell's interests expanded beyond respectable scholarship into the fringes of magic, developing what was initially only a theoretical interest in the dark arts, born from the desire to never again be the wizard who faded into the background. And by the time he graduated, the seeds were planted. He possessed a brilliant mind, but the pursuit of knowledge was slowly giving way to the pursuit of power. He wasn't evil yet, but his desire to matter made him vulnerable to darker influences. And darker influences he would certainly later find. After graduating from Hogwarts, it didn't take long for Quirrell to return, not as a student, but as a member of staff. He first took on the post of Muggle Studies professor, a position that fit comfortably within his academic background. On paper, it was an admirable pursuit, bridging the gap between magical and non-magical worlds. But for Quirrell, the role didn't offer what he truly craved: respect. He stood in front of classrooms filled with students who largely dismissed his subject, and he remained just as timid and overlooked as he had been in his youth. His stutter, his nerves, and his anxious demeanor betrayed him at every turn. His brilliance existed silently on parchment, but never in presence. And so Quirrell's resentment deepened. He still hadn't satisfied that burning desire to be recognized, noticed, feared even. He believed he was capable of more than lecturing about electricity and telephones. He wanted to make true contributions to wizarding knowledge, and for the first time, he began to believe that knowledge alone might not be enough. Power, however, that could change everything. Seeking more than confined academia could offer, Quirrell arranged for a year-long sabbatical. Publicly, he framed this as a scholarly expedition, an opportunity to travel the world and better understand the dark arts from experience, not just from books. As Hagrid would later remark, "Poor bloke, brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off. Never been the same since." This journey would include Albania, a place already darkened by Voldemort's influence, though most wizards didn't know it. At first, Quirrell's pursuit of the dark arts was mostly academic, but fear and obsession warped his intentions. A theoretical fascination transformed into something more dangerous, a belief that the dark arts could empower him in ways the school environment never could. According to Rowling's original character notes, it was inadequacy that drove him to seek Voldemort out, and arrogance that convinced him he could withstand whatever he found. Quirrell set out hoping to uncover ancient magical knowledge, discoveries that would earn him recognition. Instead, he encountered a weakened Voldemort, still clinging to life and searching for a way back. And in Quirrell, Voldemort saw an opportunity, a body to use until something better came along. Voldemort never overpowered Quirrell in a dramatic duel. He didn't need to. Quirrell was already weakened, emotionally and magically, by his own ambition. Voldemort simply offered him what he wanted most, a chance to be important, a chance to be feared. But once he accepted that offer, he was completely unprepared for the reality of what it meant to serve the darkest wizard alive. Voldemort slowly hollowed him out, twisting his beliefs, breaking his will, and taking command of his body. By the time their arrangement was complete, Quirrell no longer controlled his own life, or even his own voice. A wizard, young, foolish, and gullible, wandered across my path in the forest I'd made my home. Oh, he seemed the very chance I'd been dreaming of, for he was a teacher at Dumbledore's school. He was easy to bend to my will. He brought me back to this country, and after a while, I took possession of his body, to supervise him closely as he carried out my orders. What began as a chance to learn the dark arts turned into something far worse. He became a vassal, a host, a shield behind which Voldemort could hide. Quirrell returned from Albania to Britain, carrying Voldemort with him, a bodiless Dark Lord who would soon make the Professor his host. Before the following school year even began, Quirrell made an attempt to steal the Philosopher's Stone directly from Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Voldemort, aware that something valuable was being protected there, and that Hagrid had been sent to retrieve it, ordered Quirrell to intercept the item from Vault 713. But Quirrell arrived too late. Hagrid had already removed the stone on Dumbledore's instructions, leaving the vault empty when the break-in occurred. The incident was reported in the Daily Prophet the very next day. On that same morning, Harry encountered Quirrell for the first time at the Leaky Cauldron. Still maintaining his usual facade, Quirrell greeted him nervously. "Potter, can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." At this stage, Quirrell had not yet been fully overtaken by Voldemort, which explains why he was able to shake Harry's hand without suffering any harm. From Dumbledore's perspective, the Gringotts break-in sent a very clear warning. Voldemort, or someone working on his behalf, was already making a move. Following the failed Gringotts attempt, Voldemort's influence over Quirrell deepened. No longer satisfied with simply guiding him, the Dark Lord began to physically inhabit Quirrell's body, draining his strength in exchange for his presence. By the time Quirrell returned to Hogwarts to begin the school year, Voldemort had fully attached himself to the back of Quirrell's head. With a vacancy in the position, he was appointed the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, replacing his former post in Muggle Studies. At first glance, it seemed like a major step forward in his career, but beneath the surface, Quirrell was no longer acting alone. Quirrell also began wearing a distinctive purple turban, which he claimed was a gift from an African prince for removing a troublesome zombie. In reality, the turban served a far different purpose, concealing Voldemort, whose face had fused itself to the back of Quirrell's head. Though Quirrell remained physically alive and present, his behavior reflected a fragmented internal struggle. His stutter, already a long-standing nervous trait, persisted, but his manner occasionally shifted to something far more assertive and controlled. This was especially noticeable when Voldemort spoke through him. Voldemort's influence stripped Quirrell of any remaining autonomy. He still existed, but his decisions, strength, and willpower were increasingly directed by the Dark Lord sharing his body. From that point onward, Quirrell's primary objective became clear: assist Voldemort in regaining power and recover the Philosopher's Stone. On Halloween night, Quirrell made his next move. During the feast, he released a mountain troll into the dungeons, then dramatically burst into the Great Hall to warn the staff. As panic spread throughout the castle, Quirrell slipped away from the commotion and headed straight for the third-floor corridor, using the troll as cover to get past the protections guarding the stone. But things didn't go according to plan. Snape, having been keeping a close eye on Quirrell for weeks, followed close behind. His interference resulted in a confrontation with Fluffy, the massive three-headed dog stationed as the first line of defense. Snape left the encounter injured, bitten in the leg, and Quirrell was once again forced to retreat empty-handed. Each failed attempt only increased Voldemort's frustration, and Quirrell's fear of disappointing his master grew stronger by the day. The consequences of failure, especially with Voldemort literally attached to him, were becoming more severe. Quirrell's next attempt came during Harry's first Quidditch match. With the stone still secured behind multiple enchantments and Snape watching him closely, Quirrell shifted his focus to a simpler target, Harry himself. Midway through the match, Harry's broom began to jerk and buck violently, as if trying to throw him off. Spectators reacted in confusion, but the cause wasn't mechanical, it was magical. Quirrell, staring at Harry intently, had begun a complex jinx intended to hurl him from the sky. Harry clung on as the broom bucked and twisted beneath him, desperate to stay mounted. Down in the stands, however, Snape was once again watching Quirrell. Suspecting foul play, he began muttering a counter-curse, trying to stabilize the broom and keep Harry alive. The situation escalated further when Hermione, believing Snape to be the cause of Harry's peril, set his robes on fire. The distraction broke both spells. Quirrell stopped jinxing, Snape's counter-curse ceased, and Harry regained control of his broom. The outcome only worsened Quirrell's position. Not only had he failed again, but Snape had directly thwarted a second attempt on Harry's life. Voldemort was running out of patience, and Quirrell was running out of time. After the failed broomstick jinx, Voldemort grew desperate. Too weak to sustain himself, he relied on unicorn blood, a substance that could keep him alive, even in a spectral state. But doing so came at a cost. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you're an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have a half-life, a cursed life from the moment the blood touches your lips. And so, under Voldemort's command, Quirrell ventured into the Forbidden Forest to hunt unicorns and provide his master with the means to survive. Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Draco had been caught wandering the castle after hours. As punishment, they were assigned detention in the Forbidden Forest alongside Hagrid. Deep beneath the trees, Harry spotted a hooded figure crouched over the body of a unicorn, drinking its blood. The sight sent Malfoy screaming back through the forest, and Harry was left frozen in terror. A cold dread washed over him. He didn't know why, but he felt a horrible, unnatural reaction to the figure's presence. This was the first time Harry came face to face, however indirectly, with Voldemort since he was a baby. And though Quirrell was the one physically present, it was Voldemort who turned toward him. Harry collapsed as the pain intensified, and just before the figure reached him, Firenze, a centaur, intervened, driving Quirrell away. This encounter confirmed several key things. Voldemort was alive in some form, Quirrell was actively sustaining him, and Harry was already a direct target. It was no longer just about accessing the stone. It had become a race between Voldemort's survival and Harry's. All of Quirrell's past failures had only intensified Voldemort's urgency, and when Dumbledore was called away from the castle near the end of the school year, Voldemort saw his opening. This time, Quirrell did not rely on diversions or subtlety. He went straight for the stone. Quirrell successfully lulled Hagrid into revealing how to get past Fluffy by offering him a dragon's egg, and later using the information to play music to put the three-headed dog to sleep. Once below the trapdoor, he worked his way through the series of enchantments placed by Hogwarts staff. Quirrell burned through Sprout's devil's snare. He couldn't fly well enough to grab Flitwick's winged keys himself, so he used magic to get past them. He also avoided having to play McGonagall's giant chess game. His own troll was a non-obstacle, and with Voldemort's help, he got through Snape's logic puzzle and reached the Mirror of Erised. Each defense slowed him, but none stopped him. Quirrell reached the final chamber alone, except for the presence of Voldemort, whispering every instruction. The final protective measure guarding the stone was the Mirror of Erised, enchanted by Dumbledore. The spell ensured that only a person who sought the stone but did not intend to use it would be able to obtain it. Harry reached the chamber just after Quirrell. At that point, Quirrell had already attempted multiple spells on the Mirror of Erised, but couldn't figure out how to retrieve the stone. Voldemort then instructed him to use the boy, believing Harry might trigger the mirror's magic. When Harry stood in front of the mirror, his motivation was different from Quirrell's. He wanted the stone only to prevent Voldemort's return, not to use it himself. Because of this, the enchantment worked. The stone was silently placed into Harry's pocket without Quirrell noticing. When Quirrell realized Harry had succeeded where he had failed, Voldemort demanded that he escalate. Quirrell removed his turban, revealing Voldemort's face on the back of his head, and Voldemort attempted to convince Harry to hand over the stone. When persuasion didn't work, he ordered Quirrell to take it by force. When Quirrell grabbed Harry, his skin blistered and burnt on contact. Harry's protection, the result of his mother's sacrifice, made physical contact with him harmful to Voldemort and anyone acting on his behalf. Quirrell attempted several times to seize the stone, but each attempt caused him greater physical damage. Quirrell continued to follow Voldemort's orders despite the pain, but his body rapidly began to fail. Voldemort then realized his host was no longer useful. In desperation to survive, the Dark Lord tore himself free of Quirrell and fled the chamber as a disembodied spirit once again. Left without Voldemort's support and already fatally injured by the enchantment, Quirrell collapsed. He died shortly afterward, becoming the very first casualty of Voldemort's renewed attempts to gain power. Quirinus Quirrell's story is often reduced to a single year, the one in which he served as Voldemort's host, but his role in the Philosopher's Stone plot makes him an important figure in the early stages of Voldemort's return. Quirrell sought Voldemort out. He wasn't forced, threatened, or manipulated through ideology. He approached the Dark Lord because he believed Voldemort could give him what he lacked: confidence, recognition, and power. Through Quirrell, Voldemort gained a living host capable of sustaining his weakened existence, access to Hogwarts, its protections and its secrets, and his very first opportunity to regain a physical form. But Quirrell's death confirmed something just as important. Lily Potter's protection still worked. Harry was not only the survivor of Voldemort's killing curse, he remained protected against Voldemort in a way no one fully understood. And this revelation would shape Voldemort's strategy for years to come. Officially, Quirrell's death was attributed to the dangers of dark magic. It's not known how much information about Quirrell's downfall was ever shared beyond those directly involved. The wider wizarding world, including the students who once mocked him and colleagues who overlooked him, likely never learned the full extent of his connection to Voldemort during that school year. Quirrell largely vanished from the record, another name lost in the margins of a much larger conflict. His life is a reminder that the path to darkness does not always begin with hatred. Sometimes it begins with a quiet belief that you're not enough, and the willingness to let someone else fill that void. And that's it for today's video. Hopefully you learned something about Professor Quirinus Quirrell. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, pay careful attention to this warning from a corrupted mind. There is no good and evil, there is only power, and to those too weak to seek it.